Hi Bible Art Journalers, this is October 2020 and this is going to be a recording of a live session that I did for a teachers and facilitators group. We're going to jump right into the activity today and then I'll talk to you a little bit about the inspiration behind it as we're working. So the first thing you're going to need is, whoops, I'm going to knock my things over here. Is a piece of cardstock and some very sharp scissors. I love my little cutter bees. So for your cardstock, you're going to want to fold it a few times. Because we're doing things in our margin and the margin is very narrow, putting more folds in the paper will keep you kind of in a narrower format so that it fits in your margin. And it doesn't have to be some particular measurement, just put a few folds in. If you're working on an art journal or something bigger, then you can do fewer folds and make bigger pieces. We are going to, here's the one I did for my class, what I did with my ladies this last, let me put this under so maybe you can see it. You cut on the fold and then it gives you the whole image. And then we're going to hand cut some fall images. And if you don't feel comfortable cutting freehand, what some of my ladies did in my class when I taught this is they brought up, they did a Google search on their phone for like a leaf line drawing or an acorn line drawing. And then they actually just put another piece of paper over their phone, traced the image, and then they folded it over the cardstock. They folded the paper over the cardstock and cut. So the idea around the cutting is that you want to leave the image whole because two reasons. We're going to have a positive and a negative for our use today image. The negative space that you cut out, and then the positive is the piece that comes out of there. And then, or maybe I said that backwards, but you get the idea. So you want to keep your cutout whole. You don't want to cut little individual leaves and then have them all floating around. And then also you want to try and keep this from opening. So you can see I made the mistake here and it still worked, but it just slips more. And so makes it a little harder to hold it still when you're painting. All right, so there's some ideas to get your brain moving in this direction. And if you need to Google search an image to copy, that's fine. So I have a mushroom here. I'm going to go ahead and just do some freehand cutting, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what inspired me to get going on this. So I did this page first, and it's from Isaiah 40, verse 8. Grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God will stand forever. And I was inspired to go to this verse. Number one, fall's here. The grass is pretty dry. The flowers are fading for sure, and the leaves are changing, and we have been in a tough season. I don't think there's anybody here who hasn't had some challenge of the season that we've been in. I won't go into too much detail, but you know, personally for us, the COVID stuff has been challenging. It's been challenging for our work, for our family. Our daughter and son-in-law lost their jobs because of COVID and have not been able, they've been applying for jobs for months. We had terrible wildfires that burned within 3/4 of a mile of our home. And we are so grateful that our home was spared. But part of what we had to do post-fire was we cut down all the big, beautiful trees that were right up against our house, because everybody who lost property here had trees very near their house. And we still have trees on our property, but we definitely needed to get some further away from the house. And it was in the thought of the current season and feeling a little discouraged about all that we've been through and that everybody is going through, not just us, and realizing that, you know, this was the beginning of the month, and the tensions among friends, even around political issues, the thought of, you know, how much longer will the COVID stuff be affecting us, and we've got winter coming, and when the elections are done, there's going to be disgruntled people, and what's that going to be like? And I was just feeling the weight of that, and surely, you know, I have faith in the Lord that His hand is over everything, but we still can get discouraged. And I was just having a day when I was really discouraged, and I was thinking about seasons, and all of a sudden I was walking on our driveway, and right under the front tire of our truck there was a big long acorn. And we don't have oak trees on our property, so, you know, some little bird friend must have brought this to our property and dropped it. And I feel like it was such a reminder in the moment that in that acorn there is all the hope of a giant oak tree that can grow from that. And it was just God's reminder to me. I feel He wants to remind me that there's hope in the future. His word stands forever, and His reign stands forever, and I can have hope in that. We all need those reminders from our friends, from our loved ones, and from the word of the Lord especially, right? So that's kind of where this came from, the inspiration for the acorns. And I've got an acorn in this one, and I had an acorn in the first one. So these first verses were in Isaiah 40, and then I went on to the next page and kept on, because it talks about in Isaiah 40 verse 28 on to 31 about the Lord being everlasting, that He doesn't grow faint or weary. He gives power to us, and He increases our strength, and we just need to wait on Him. And waiting in some of these seasons is very difficult, but we can be assured that when we wait, our strength will be renewed. We'll get through it with Him by our side. I was listening to a podcast, I think, and they were talking about, I think it was Natalie Grant and her husband were on a podcast, and she was talking about having gone through this very scary experience with cancer and the possibility of not being able, she's a singer, if you don't know who she is, and she was very, it was very likely that after her surgery for her cancer, she would have damage to her vocal nerve and not be able to sing anymore. And her husband shared that they were so reassured about, like, no matter where your path goes ahead of you in life, God is there on that path ahead of you. He already knows what you're going to go through, and He is there ahead of you, waiting to hold your hand and walk through that season with you, or that part of your life with you. And so I just really love that and wanted to share it. So as you can see, I'm just cutting away here. So hopefully you're jumping in and doing some cutting, and anything that you are inspired to cut, just just do it. Okay, it gets a little tricky in here, but just keep at it. That's why I love these little scissors, because I can get in here easier. And you know, there's really no wrong way. If you feel like my stem, I feel like my stem is getting too thick, I'll just go in and take a little more out. This next page is Isaiah 41 verses 9, this last sentence of 9 and through 14, and it's just reassurance that we've been chosen and not cut off and cast out. We're told not to fear or be dismayed, and the thing that resonated in it for me is that that God's the one who helps us, and He keeps being there to help us, and it just gives me so much hope and reassurance to just keep doing what He's called us to do and keep sharing. Okay, so I've got some cutouts. I've got some leaves. I've got a couple different acorns. I got a big fat one. Here, let me put this under again. You realize you can't really see it well with... Maybe this way. So I've got a couple little acorns and a mushroom and some different leaves. And now we get to go to the painting part. And I have just a little leftover nacho boat from my oldest daughter's wedding. We have lots of them left, so you don't need very much paint because we want to keep this really thin. I recommend that you pick, you know, 3 or 4 colors. You just need a couple little dabs. And then we're going to actually use baby wipes because we want to apply this really thin. I'm realizing I have a lot of paint in my fingernails already, so I just got a baby wipe here, and if your baby wipes are really wet, take something and wring it out because you don't want a lot of excess water in there. I use these, they're mats for baking, and they come in these big sheets. You can see maybe that I have this big one on my desktop. I also have taken them and cut them into 4 pieces so that I can use them under my Bible page. Is we're going to layer, and this is where people got, I'll just be honest, you have to let yourself have a little freedom with this and be willing to just try, and don't worry if you feel like it's a mistake, because there's no mistakes in art. We're just going to have a little fun. I do recommend that you start with the darkest colors and work up to lighter, or start with the lighter and then work up to darker. So it doesn't matter which way you go, but you just want to be able to have the contrast. So I'm just going to dip my wadded up baby wipe in this paint, and I'm going to kind of draw it out and thin it out on the cardboard here, because I don't want a big glob of paint. I just want a little bit on there. And then you're going to hold this, and when you're working with the cutout piece, you want to start on the edge and draw in. I'm trying not to block my light here. And the reason you want to do that is because if I'm trying to go out, all these little pieces will want to fold up out of the way, and we want them to lay nice and flat. Okay, so I got my lightest one. So I'm starting lightest going darker. And you want this to dry pretty well. That's another reason to keep your paint really thin. You want this to dry well because if you put the cardstock back down while this paint is still wet and you start pushing on it, it could stick to your wet paint, and then when you try and pull the cardstock up, it'll rip. So you don't want that, obviously. I'm gonna take my chances here. And so you're just gonna layer somewhere over the image you already have, and you're gonna go with another color. And remember, we're gonna go from the outside edge in. Okay, and you're just going to keep layering like that. And I started saying that this is where the challenge kind of came in for people, is that they were afraid of the layering, and so they would just kind of do these little individual stenciled things and not overlap them. And so I encourage you to embrace the process a little bit today. Okay, so now I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna do some of the negative space ones too. So when you're using your cutout, you're going to go from the center out, opposite of what we've been doing with the stencil, because you don't want it to slip when you're doing this. And you can go quite a ways away from where you're, you know, you could do a whole lot of the page, or you could just do little pieces. And then you're gonna go ahead and do another layer over the top of that. And you can switch out your baby wipes to different sections of it, or you can get a different one for each color. Just remember to keep drawing the color out. And then if you are working along and you want to blend some of your colors and see what you get in your palette, that's fine too. So you might have noticed as I'm painting these that I actually used my pieces from the first couple things that I did. I went ahead and took the pieces that were my cutouts, and once they were painted from the activity, I went ahead and just glued them down on my page and did some writing on them. And so that was just a fun way to use these pieces as well as the process of doing the layering. And you're just going to keep layering and layering until you're happy with the result. And then you'll notice, like on this page, I took some gold pen. For some reason, these Bic marking fine point permanent markers, if they're the gold and the silver, do not bleed through the pages. And usually on acrylic paint, the acrylic paint will act as a page sealer, and things won't bleed through. But particularly these, I use them for highlighting on the verses too, because the gold and silver don't bleed through. So that's just a kind of a cool tip. So I did some highlighting on this page with the gold, and then I also came in with my favorite black pen, which is the Illustrated Faith pen. I find that this does not smear when it gets wet. Again, it dries quicker than like the Pigma pens tend to stay wet longer, and I'm just impatient, I guess. And then when I do other wet mediums on top, it smears. That the Illustrated Faith pens have been pretty good for that, not smearing. Okay, I'm gonna keep working through here, and I think I'm gonna try and do this blue a little thicker, just because I want it to have a good impression. And make the true color come through. I'm realizing my sheet, I started talking about it and didn't leave it under. Now that I'm on the edge, I really want it there. In both of these, I used open space from the cutout to put my writing in, and that made it easier to see. So doing this very last, maybe something you want to try. Let's see what else. I think I'm gonna put some more acorns in there. Let's do some more with the stencil. You just keep building until you like what you got. And I'll tell you one other thing that I learned with this page is if you don't like something, just paint the whole background a solid color over the top and start again and build up from the darkest to the lighter colors. That works too. So it's a great technique for really experimenting to see what you like. I'll give one more tip before I go. And of course, I'm not promoting any products or that you have to buy things, but I love to share tips that have worked for me and then take it or leave it, okay? So one of the things my ladies love are these quick wrap sandwich wraps, and I originally got them from Sam's Club online. You can actually put the artwork that they do on this paper, cut it out and put it into your Bible by using this for the glue. And you just put a light layer under the paper and then lay the paper from one end to the next and smooth out any wrinkles, and then let it dry, and then you can do another layer over the top. And then it just seals it onto your Bible. So you can make all your experiments on this paper and then take the part you like and put it into your Bible. So the deli paper has been a lifesaver for those who are feeling hesitant. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.